introductions. I'm Ed Theobald, Town Supervisor.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bollinger, Town Councilor.
John Deere, Town Councilor.
Elaine Denton, Town Councilor.
Karen Green, Deputy Supervisor.
Caitlin Creasel, Town Councilor.
Heather Waters, Town Councilor. Hi.
And with us tonight also, the other town officials, we have Randy Capriati, Director of Code Enforcement. Chief Mike Kroll, Police Chief Mike Kroll. We have our Highway Superintendent, Rod Cushing. Our Town Attorney, Tim Frateski. Town Attorney Jamie Sufkin, I believe, will be joining us a little later at one point. We also have with us Town Engineer Doug Miller. There's Doug. Town Manager Anu. And of course, last but not least, Town Clerk Allison Weber. Very good. I didn't forget anybody, right? Okay. And then again, we'll once we get to the presenters, we'll do the introductions then as well. So at this point, we need item 3, which is approval of the minutes September 9th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September 9th.
Second.
All right. Any comments on that at all? Any conversation? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed and carried. All right. We need to pay some bills, I think, too. I don't see the abstract.
It's after the public hearing.
It is. Oh, we're doing it afterward.
Number 7.
You could go out of order. That's just an error.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we'll get that business out of the way. If someone wants to make a motion on approving the abstract number 18, I'm sorry.
Okay, abstract number 18, I'll make a motion to approve $573,920.91.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Very good. All right, now we'll move on to the public hearing. It's 6:36. We're not doing bad. We're going to do it just a tad differently. I'm going to introduce Sarah Bollinger and Elaine, who have been working with the mayors as well as the fire chiefs and clerk treasurers with the budgets. And so I'd like to have Sarah begin with an explanation. Of course, we'll get to waiving the reading of the public notice and so on as well before we open it. But Sarah, do you want to get the ball rolling there?
Sure. Just for people viewing, I wanted to start out with the understanding that there's 4 fire districts in the town of Manlius. 3 are operated by the villages of Manoa, Fayetteville, and Manlius, and the 4th is an independent fire district in the hamlet of Kirkville. The village fiscal year runs from June 1st to May 31st, so the village budgets have already been passed, and the villages are 4 months into their current year. The town fiscal year is January 1 to December 31. The action we take on the proposed fire district budgets will authorize the collection of taxes and the payment of the funds so collected to the 3 villages and the Kirkville Fire Company. The town typically makes these payments in February, which by this time, the villages are 9 months into their fiscal years. Councilor Denton and I met with each of the villages. We'd like to thank the mayors, fire chiefs, and village clerks for their time and cooperation in this process. We plan to meet with them again in the winter to talk about the 2022 fire district budgets before the villages' budgets are finalized. Councilor Denton gathered the data and made the informational slides which accompany each presentation. Mr. Supervisor, I'd now like to make a motion to waive the reading of the public hearing notice.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good.
And now I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing for the Manlius Fire District.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, we're doing screen sharing. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's like I said, we're doing a little differently. We'll have the mayors and with Sarah and Elaine. I think you had this PowerPoint presentation. We'll start with Manlius. So we have Mayor Worrell, Village Clerk Martha Digert, and Chief. I can get Jansen right, but I can never get his last name right. It's Castles. Am I pronouncing that?
Cassels.
Castells, okay, close. All right, I had the accent in the wrong place. So,
So I'm wondering from the point of view of the audience, if we all blacked ourselves out so that their pictures would come to the top,
well, oh.
does that work?
Right now, the only person that they'll probably see is the person speaking, because it's when you're sharing a screen, our faces kind of disappear. So I don't think I don't think people will really be able to see us unless we're talking.
Depending whether you're watching on Facebook, on an iPad, on your phone, you have different options. But if people on their laptops or computers choose the little screen to just make the speaker who's speaking speak, it's the one window versus the Brady Bunch option.
Right. Okay. And all right, very good. And we can do that. And then so once the presentations are finished, and then the board, if we have any questions, we could do that, and then I'll open it up to let the public talk as well, ask questions. So, who wants to start with the presentation?
So Mayor Worrell, go ahead with what it is you would like to talk about. These slides are just going to run in the background.
Geez, a slide. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The slides kind of speak for themselves. You know, we are into our third year in the new fire station. Things are going well. The call volumes are kind of normal to what they normally are. Possibly a little down on because of the COVID-19. People are less hesitant to necessarily call and stuff. You know, our budget is down. We did very well with the budget this year. I think last year the tax rate was 1.84. This year it's at 1.80.
Yep.
What? Oh, I thought somebody was saying something. You know, we have a new chief who's just completed his first full year, and we're very happy with him. Right now, I'll just say that up front, we're happy with him right now. But he's doing a great job. We've done real well equipment-wise. We're probably not going to be looking at any new piece of equipment, at least for another year. We just received our ambulances last year. Right now, we still continue our recruitment and retention programs. It's tough to do that with COVID, but we did have a program that we took in a bunch of new recruits this year, and they recently completed their orientation. We're probably at about, I think we're at 12 career staff. We're at about 70 active volunteers. And by that, I mean our 70 volunteers are all trained to respond to fire or EMS calls, some to both, some to one or the other. And some of them have different jobs that they perform. A little different than what it was years ago, where you kind of were expected to perform everything. This year, or now, the past few years, we've taken in people that are dedicated to certain positions, whether they're apparatus operators, whether they're interior firefighters, exterior firefighters, EMS. So, as you can see, the members provide approximately 1,757 hours in training during drills and classes. We're fortunate, along with the rest of the fire departments in the town. I'll speak on their behalf because it's not often I get to speak before Mayor Olson. So, but the thing is, a lot of our training is done in-house or within the town. We have a lot of our personnel that are trained and to do county and statewide training. So it makes it a lot better, especially for our volunteers, because they don't have to travel. They don't have to go away from home for weeks at a time, leave their families. They can do it evenings and weekends in-house. So working together, we work real well together within the town of Manlius on training, along with the DeWitt Fire Department. They are also part of our training programs. As you see, there's 35,216 volunteer and career duty hours. That's the time that the people sign up, and they're either signed up to respond from home or they signed up to respond from the station. We have overnight people that are volunteers that stay overnight. They pick nights that they can stay, and they come in the evening and stay till morning. We have some that come on the weekends, and they work with our career staff. They do training while they're staying at the firehouse. We initially were starting our bunk-in program, which is bringing college students in to bunk in. We do have the quarters for students, which we can use to assist us on fire calls when they're not at school. But right now, that's a tough situation, again, because of COVID. A little tough to bring in college kids right now with what's going on. So some of those programs are put on hold. As the map, I think if you can go back to the map, our fire district on the map is a little bigger than what it shows on the map. I tried to get Elaine a better copy, but because we're in a renovation here and our offices are in disarray, I wasn't able to find it. But we do cover 27 square miles. We also are automatic with our neighboring departments. We go south as far as Route 20. At times we go beyond Route 20. We go beyond Route 20 to Delphi Falls. We go beyond Route 20 to Cazenovia. We cover Chittenango. We go to Jamesville. And we go even further than that when needed. But within our area, we cover 27 square miles. And I won't give you the exact outline of our territory, but we go a little bit farther than what it shows on that map. I would defer to Martha to explain the budget since she did all the work on it. So, Martha, if you're there.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi. Well, I do the breakdown of the fire contract based on our departmental budget lines, employee benefits, debt service, and the revenues are included, and they're credited to all three of the entities that we serve: the Village of Manlius, the Town of Manlius, and the Town of Pompey. All three pay the same tax rate, if you will, for the fire service, and it's based on the assessed valuation of the properties within the district. As the mayor stated previously, our last year the tax rate was $1.84 per thousand. This year it's down to $1.80. We were able to reduce some expenditures. We had ambulances that we purchased last year. The full cost of the ambulances was not included. We did a lease purchase, and I believe Jansen can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think the ambulances were included in the lease purchase. So it was that portion of that service that increased the tax rate to $1.84. But year to year, we don't marginally increase the tax rate. It fluctuates year to year based on what our actual need is. The employee benefits line, I was able to receive from our providers such as workers' comp, actual based on our personnel costs, what that rating would be and what portion of our workers' comp premium is attributable to the fire department. I'm pretty comfortable with the numbers that we provided. If you'll notice, under the ambulance billing, you guys don't see that, I don't think. Oh, I was headed to revenue, but you're on the budgetary lines. Where's the personnel costs, obviously, and the benefits are the highest. Equipment is lower. So on the revenue side, I believe our total budget is lower. On the revenue side, we had to decrease the projected ambulance billing based on what the actuals were looking to be. I mean, there's a possibility it's going to be higher, but that dropped a little this year. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
So Martha, you said that the reason for the reduction had to do with the ambulance purchase?
Well, that and some other things. The chief inherited this budget when he came on. Right? No. Boy, years are running in together. We have a capital project going on and I can't think clearly. So the chief has been working on, and he can speak to what he's done for some of our necessary O&M on the new station. He's been able to go in and look at what was in place from prior administration, managerial staff in the fire station, and find where we can reduce some costs. He's done a great job in working with the volunteers, working with getting lateral transfer part-timers to fill in shifts so we don't have to add any shifts. We have some personnel out on workers' comp related issues, so we have to fill in. Instead of incurring more overtime, what he's done is added competent staff that we only have to assist with training for our department. I really would rather he spoke to this, but I can say that he's done a great job to keep our overtime costs lower, and that's a part of it. The contractual savings, plus we aren't making any large apparatus purchases this year.
Yeah, because that's a little over 1.6 reduction here from last year. So with the lower rate, it helps too. So
Right.
good to see. That's all I have. Anybody else on the board have any questions or comments they'd like to make before I open it up for public comment? No? Okay. What we'll do, Allison, I think you mentioned raising hands or using the Q&A. If anyone wants to speak from the public, again, we identify yourself, your name, address, and so on, and 3 to 5 minutes to speak, and then if the chief or mayor or Martha can answer your questions, they'll do that. So, do we have anyone, Allison?
I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A function, and I don't see any hands going up.
Ed,
Yes.
just so everybody knows, the picture of the medic car in there, that medic car,
The what?
I think he froze.
Yeah, he cut out. Martha, you know what he's going at with in the picture? This one?
Yep, this is Jansen. Yeah, the picture's old, I'm sure is where the mayor was going.
Yeah,
Medicare was replaced a couple of years ago with a newer vehicle.
Okay. You're back on, Paul.
yeah, and so are the ambulances. Those aren't the newer ambulances either, so.
Okay. That's
They look the same, but they're not the new ones.
all right. Very good. And I don't, like you said, I don't see anybody else. So unless we could make a motion to come out of the public hearing if we'd like. I know we have been sort of keeping them open, but
So I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. So unless the board has any other comments regarding the fire contract with Manlius, we just need a motion to approve that.
I will make a motion to approve the fire contract for the Manlius Fire District.
And I'll second it. Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, very good. Well, we got through that one. Now we'll get my notes in order here, and we'll move on to,
Are you done with us, Ed?
yeah, unless you want to hang around, Paul, you know. It's
No, not really. I'd like to go home and eat dinner, so.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for joining us. And Martha, it was so nice to see you on the Zoom.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
you too, Caitlin. Take care.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
See
Okay.
you later.
Bye.
Good luck during the renovations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your patience on that too, for sure.
Thank you.
I thought Paul would want to listen to Mayor Olson. I don't know.
Oh, no, I listened to him enough. Thank you.
I do.
All right, we'll see you now. All right. So Sarah, we can continue on with the,
Yes, please. So if you want to invite announce the members from Fayetteville, and then Allison will help with the screen.
perfect. All right. Of course, we have with us Mayor Mark Olson, Clerk Lori Corset, and Chief Paul Hildreth back on. I think we're all working on that. I see the mayor. He's moving now, so that's good. Very good, Mark. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. So if you want to get the ball roll, oh, we got to open it up though.
Oh, all right. Sorry. So I make a motion to open the public hearing for the Village of Fayetteville Fire District.
Do we need to waive?
Waive the public notice.
You have to waive the
Waive the
public
reading. Sorry. I'll waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And carried? Now we can make it.
So I had a,
Go ahead.
just, so because of the change, we have to potentially move this one to the next meeting. So do
Oh.
we open the meeting? I mean, do we do the public hearing still now and then we do it again next meeting, or?
What I anticipated doing, Elaine, would be opening the public hearing tonight, and then holding it open until
Okay.
the next meeting.
Thank you.
Because the numbers were different, Tim, that was the idea of how it was, okay, all right, posted. All right. So we need a second on that.
Then I will second to open.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried? All right, Mayor, now it's all yours.
Hold on one second. He's destroying my office. Hold on. Trying to turn the microphone down a little bit. Well, thank you all for being here, and thank you for letting us tell you all about the Fayetteville Fire and EMS budget. I really want to thank Sarah and Elaine. We had probably a good close to 2-hour meeting at the fire station with the chief, and I really appreciate the time and your questions and everything that you did walking through the station and seeing exactly what happens at the Fayetteville Fire Department. We think we're a unique fire department as one of the busiest departments in Onondaga County. We appreciate the support of the town and our residents, and especially the members that dedicate all those hours to the community. I want to thank the chief and the Lori and everybody that puts this budget together. Sarah laid a perfect outline of how we start. We actually start back in February putting this together, and then we approve it in April and start in June. This COVID has been a challenge. You know, we weren't expecting it. We didn't budget for it, but the department has done a great job of adapting and making sure that we're taking care of the citizens in our community and in our fire district. I also want to thank, we have a great relationship with the town code enforcement office, and the town police department has a substation in our firehouse, and that cooperation between the codes and the police has turned out to be invaluable for a lot of things going on in our day-to-day response. So I want to thank, when they talk about working together and joint opportunities, the Fayetteville Fire Department is pleased to be with the police department and the code enforcement office of the town to be working on joint projects. I wish our numbers were better. Our calls are down, so that is a good thing. That means less people are using our services, but that means that our costs are going up. So in some of this, you'll see in the numbers, you know, while they don't look good, I have some good news coming out of this in the next few years on the capital side that I think will help us climb out of this, and we should be in better shape in a few years. But the medical center closing, their urgent care is about 250 responses a year that we will no longer have. With COVID, we were already down another couple hundred calls. So we've seen our revenue on the ambulance side really go down, which was not a budgeted expense that we thought was going to happen this year. So some of it is in our ambulance revenue, some of it is in capital, and some of it is in our overall expenses. Just to point out in this slide, I didn't see this earlier, I didn't catch it earlier, but the actual number for the duty station hours and standby is not 6,800, it's 65,264. So Elaine, that's not your fault. I didn't catch it. I apologize. But I want to say to the members, the 100 volunteers donated 65,000 hours of service to the community, to our fire protection district. And I want to say thank you to all those members that put in their time, their talent, and in most cases, they're away from their family. Tonight, I just walked through 5 of them. They're doing rig checks, they're doing ambulance calls, they're going on fire calls, they're doing training, they're cleaning the station, they're cleaning the equipment, all for the love of their community and their department. So I want to say thank you to the members of the Fayetteville Fire Department and EMS. So when I looked at the numbers with Lori and we were working through the budget, you know, year over year, it's up about 4%. If you look at total expenditures with capital, 80 of that is up in the total operating expenses. I did find that the one slide that talks about personnel costs, and a lot of the town councilors haven't heard my spiel before, but 75% of our budget is labor and benefits. So when we talk to the chief about cutting his budget and working on his budget, it's really only 25 cents on every dollar that we can work on because we have to have the staff to respond to the calls. And this year, we've lost a few staff members to the Manlius Fire Department. So we brought in a few replacements, but we actually have one position right now that we're not sure that we're going to fill until we see either the call volume get back up. And if it doesn't, then that position will be left unfilled. But we're still seeing, you know, a decrease in the amount of calls that we're going on. And some of you, if you're not on it, we can get you on the weekly update that we get from the chief. It's a recap of the week's events, the week's calls, EMS, fire, and then all the activities that are happening in the station for the week. So the numbers this year are a little bit off. But as I said, on the capital side, the chief's vehicles come off in this budget in 2021. The engine comes off in 21-22. The ambulances come off in 21-22. The ladder truck comes off in 23-24. And the building, which is the biggest one, comes off in the budget year 25-26. The difference between Fayetteville's building and Manlius and Manoa's building is we had to do a 15-year bond because it was attached to an existing building. The other departments could do a 30-year bond. We didn't have that choice because we stayed with the existing station and added on. The good news is after 25-26, every capital expense on the town side will be paid for, and we'll be able to do a better job working on trying to come up with a 5-year capital plan that is much smaller than what this is. and will hopefully save the taxpayers money for the foreseeable future. So between the revenue, the capital, and the labor side, the expenses are up. And the share for the town is up considerably, but it's actually 25% for the village that it went up this year. So we're both feeling the pain of these ambulance revenues decreasing and the call decreasing with the expenses staying the same. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, Karen, how are you?
Good, how are you?
How are you doing with recruiting and retention with this pandemic?
So the nice thing is the chief came out with an initiative. We've hired a professional company. The department paid and the district paid $20,000. The Firemen's Association paid $20,000. So we're going after a very aggressive recruitment and retention program that's outside of the box, that hasn't been done in our area, with a professional company doing videos and doing a lot of different things to outreach to the public. Our biggest need is volunteers, because every volunteer we have can help save the ability for us to have to hire another career staff member. But we've had to fill back shifts or shifts that are empty with volunteers with career staff because we have to be staffed. We have to be ready to respond at a moment's notice. Most of the new town councilors haven't heard me say this, but we can't get it wrong. We've got to be right, and we've got to be there at every call, very similar to the police and when our DPW and other services are required during an emergency. We've got to get it right, and so having staffing here is the way to do that. Perfect example is the Arid Evans Inn fire. We ended up saving that building because we had a response time of less than 3 minutes. We had mutual aid from DeWitt, Manlius, Manoa, great support from all our mutual aid departments, and that historic building is saved because of our speed of response and our training. I don't have it on here, but there's a picture of the roof. The roof had 10 shingles, layers of shingles on it. It was something that just isn't, but we were trained for that. Something we weren't expecting, but we trained for that just in case. So all these examples of all the departments and helping us in the training that we do, we hope to get more recruitment, and this new program that the chief is working on with the people in the department and the association funding it, I think will benefit us for years to come.
Hi, Mayor, it's Sarah. There was a question from Barb Wilson on Facebook with regard to how you do ambulance billing. Could you just briefly answer that question?
Ambulance billing is every resident in the town of Manlius, if we transport, because we go to Manlius, we go to Fayetteville, we go to Manoa, we go to Kirkville. Everybody gets a bill from a billing service that all three of us use the same billing service. At the end of the day, if your insurance company pays, say the bill is $500 and your insurance company pays $250, then the rest is written off as a town resident because you're all paying for it in your town taxes. The difference is if you don't live in the town of Manlius, then we collect that bill. It's called what we call a hard bill. And so you are required to pay that whole bill. And the medical center was a large revenue source for the Fayetteville Fire District. We used to do close to 1,200 calls there a year. That has slowly over the years dropped, and we're seeing less and less calls there. But we're still seeing, we're still the busiest of the three departments in the town. Our average, I think Manlius just said they had 1,400 ambulance calls. We're going to do close to 2,300 ambulance calls. And we have 3 ambulances because we're pretty busy with what we have. So we're going to be looking at all those things. The joint purchase that Paul talked about saved us about $60,000 in taxpayer funds when we bought those together because we bought 3 ambulances and it was a $20,000 savings per ambulance. And Manlius saved 20 for 2. So combined, we saved close to $100,000. Hopefully I answered that question.
To put things in perspective, Mayor, I know I gave you a call when I saw the change in revenue from 200,000 dropping, but I understood that completely. And I know you and I sort of batted around some of the expenditures and so on, but this pie chart here sort of puts things in perspective. The one that shows the expenses with the personnel and benefits at over 70% 4% or thereabouts. So, I mean,
Yes.
even if we were to pick at those other services, it's just scratching the surface, so to speak, you know, the surface. So I understand that. I mean, it was up. Could you explain? I'm just curious. I mean, it was up quite a bit, about 6% before that revenue dropped. What would you say is the largest component of that increase for the budget? Now, besides the revenue, I think.
Yeah, on the capital side, we purchased new chief's vehicles this year. So that was a $67,000 addition to your budget. So on that side, there's 67. On the overall operating expense, it was up about 80,000. So 67% of that that's the operating side of the department. I think that's really where a majority of it is. It's capital plus operating expenses, and then the minus revenues that we have is where we're taking the biggest hit.
Gotcha. And it's going to be a fine day when the building starts to drop off and a few of those other large purchases over the next 3 to 4 years. I know that.
Yeah, that's the capital side is 731,000. I mean, you know, yeah, right there is going to be 350 of that is the building. So if that comes off, you know, and say that we only have 1 bond at a time or 2 bonds at a time, you know, you could be looking at a savings of $500,000 off this budget. That's a big number.
Yeah.
You know, and then maybe if revenues stabilize, it's one of those double-edged swords. You know, revenues are down, but that means calls are down. That's a good thing.
Yeah, right.
But it's a bad thing because the expenses go up.
Yeah, I know we had the discussion about the medical center and how it just tears you up, and now it's actually hurting you by not being, you know, available because of the revenue too. You know, so.
Right.
And don't forget, you know, we've got some new construction things coming in that are kind of high use as well. Randy can answer to some of them. There's a dental office going in across from the cruise ship on Burdick Street that, you know, that could generate, you know, 100 calls a year. The adult care memory facility on Medical Center Drive is another 150 calls a year. You know, those are all still on the table that, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, you know, so the world's not ending, but, you know, there's some light at the tunnel with other buildings coming into the project, the district.
Good. Very good. Thank you for that. Any other board members have any comments or questions before we open it up to the public? Okay. Allison or whoever can see something on Facebook, are we getting any? I mean, we're going to keep this open till the next meeting.
Yep.
As we agreed. So that'll give people time to get more questions to us. But is there any? I don't see anything in the chat room or Q&A.
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing there, no hands raised.
All right. Well, why don't we do this then? We'll hold this open. Mayor, Chief, Lori, if you want to, I think we're done for now because we'll move on to Manoa next.
Okay.
And then, you know, we'll come back the next board meeting and then we'll finalize the, you know, close the public hearing at that time.
Okay. Do you need me for the IMA or are you good for that?
Oh, what do you think, Tim? She doesn't need to hang around her.
No, I think we're good. But we'd love to have you stay if you'd like to, but I think we're good.
I have a couple meetings every week, so I'll let you guys enjoy this. But I do, you know, we want to get started, so I hope you support that because I think it's going to be a great program for the town and for the village.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Lori, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Yeah, another meeting.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
So I'd like to waive the reading of the public notice for Manoa, the Manoa Fire District.
Yeah, we'll make sure we get them invited in.
And you want to introduce them?
Yep, that's what I will do. So while we're introducing them, that will be Mayor Bill Brazil and Clerk Lisa Devona, which I unfortunately I missed saying clerk treasurer to all the clerks. I apologize for that. So Sarah, if you want to continue on with that motion, or you made the motion on waiving the reading of the public notice, we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And now the public hearing.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing for the Manoa Fire District.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. So Mayor, if you're available, if you want to, Mayor Brazil, if you want to get the ball rolling, and Lori, jump in as needed.
Yeah, well, hello, everyone. Thanks for having us. I just wanted to make a note that my fire chief is also here, Matt McGarity, along with Lisa Devona. So that's who's in the room with me anyways.
Very good. Yeah, I didn't see the chief there earlier, so thank you, Bill.
He's like Paulie. He's in the background there. He'll pop in if he needs to. Yeah, I just want to, start by saying, a special thank you to Fayetteville and Manlius. We all work really well together, and in training and sharing of purchasing and doing some things that help every one of us in saving money and what we do now, together as a team for the town. Manoa Fire Department, since 1913, we've been all volunteer. So we have no paid staff, no salary. Our ambulance, however, is a paid service, but and that's contracted out to Waves, who covers our employees of our ambulance. We still carry our CON, and all the equipment is still purchased through the Village of Manoa. So we're a little different in that respect, and I know we have some new board members. And just so you know the difference between us and, Manlius and Fayetteville. The map here, we cover 77% of the town of Manlius, the northern part of the town. We go all the way out to where we meet the town of DeWitt, out to Colomer, to Sunnyside Nursing Home, if everyone's familiar where that is. That's about the Lang. And then, of course, everything north of the canal, we handle into Kirkville and the surrounding areas of the town. The big thing with us is our mutual aid, that we get called out and get pulled out of our area because we go to another, not only another town, but another county. When we go into Bridgeport, that's the town of, or the county of Madison County and the town of Sullivan. When we get called into East Syracuse, we're going into the town of DeWitt. So we, last year, 2019, we had 72 calls into the town of Sullivan and 71 calls into the town of DeWitt. So it's almost the same. But when we go into those areas, especially Sullivan, when you're going down Route 31, and near Lakeport and out that way, that takes our resources out of our village and out of the, Manlius Protection District. So therefore, Fayetteville or East Syracuse has to come in and cover us, if we have another call while we're out of that area. But just so you get an example of how many times we go that way, and it's quite a bit. Our mutual aid calls to East Syracuse, the village, is we had over 40 last year in the ambulance calls. So I just wanted to give you a rough idea where we are and all that. And as you can see in the bottom, that mutual aid 2019, I'm not sure, some of those numbers are, I don't know where those numbers came from, but they're not.
Yeah, sorry, that's not lining up.
What's that?
Sorry,
Well,
that's not lining up.
I mean, for the total of 2019, like take Bridgeport, you had 14. Let's see, where were we in Bridgeport?
Are these just fire?
Oh, those might be just fire. Then.
That might be just fire. Okay, I'll change that.
I got you. Those are fire. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yep.
Our ambulance you have separate, right? The mutual aid, or do you?
I don't have that, but I can put it in next year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. So looking at this slide, you're correct. Those are fire mutual aid calls that we've gone out of the area for. And Bridgeport is 14. Once again, that's going into the Madison County and the town of Sullivan. But anyways, it gives you a pretty good idea. We have the biggest portion of the town that we carry, that we cover. So, and a lot of it is rural, but, there's a lot of homes, Erie Village, all of Fremont, and then going out to, down into Collimer. This slide here, we have 60 total volunteers, and we have 44 interior firefighters. What that means is 44 out of our 60 are able to fight, go interior on a structure fire. We're very fortunate to have this group of volunteers that we have. It runs, our department, and our response times are great. We have, similar to Fayetteville, where we have crews that stay on overnight at least 3 to 4 times a week, either at our station in Fremont or our station down here in Manoa, starting to see more of more people staying overnight so we can have even quicker response times. But you really, volunteer isn't the right word for this position. These gentlemen and ladies put in the same amount of time and qualifications that any paid firefighter does. And they have to, it's state regulated. The state tells you how many hours of training you have to put in to be able to fight interior or exterior. And our guys, really, I take my hat off to them if I was wearing one. But volunteer, I always think of like coaching Little League or something. There should be a different name for the dedication our people have. And really a big thank you to all of our people that do that. And as you can see, the 1,500 hours of in-station standby, over 300 hours, these are all volunteers. No one's getting paid. So they're putting all that time away from their family to protect our district. Our budget, as you can see, over the last 5 years, we're pretty steady. We're pretty level. As you can see, the share of the budget and the ambulance budget, we had a slight increase in our fire budget this year. In our ambulance budget, we went out for a new ambulance, so that's where you're seeing the increase in that. Other than that, really, that's pretty self-explanatory what you're seeing there. We tried, our chief and the director of our ambulance do a fantastic job in putting this budget together every year. And I really thank them for the hard work that they do. As you can see, our expenses for the Manoa Fire Department, capital expenses, operating expenses, very little retirement, and the personnel that you're seeing there, 6.1% and 4.3%, those are DPW workers, staff in the office that do work towards the fire department. So a percentage of their pay is divided up to cover for what they do for the fire department. Clerical and the mechanic that takes care of all the equipment. So that's where those numbers come in. On the Manoa ambulance side, we don't really, what we did years ago, we thought outside the box and we had to do something with our ambulance. We're having a difficult time managing it, and our people, when we only had 8 people and you have people calling sick or vacation, and it would really put us, behind where we might have to go out of service. So we found a way to contract with Waves. So the personnel you're seeing there, 1.4%. Once again, that's like our mechanic. We still own all of our equipment. So the equipment's ours, our mechanic and personnel that cover the ambulance end of it. Everything else is a contract. And basically what Waves does, you can look at it in simpler terms, it's like an employee leasing. They supply the employees and they manage them. And they run our department. They still answer to the Village of Manoa under any problems or anything we have to do, but everything is basically under a contract with them to supply the personnel and the service that they operate. And you can see, the revenues and operating expenses and everything else right there. I don't know, is there another slide there? And our apparatus. Some of that stuff.
Bill, I see we're staying consistent with the color green with everything here.
Yeah, as always, green is our color. And our green engines are unique, and that's why we always get invited to the Syracuse St. Patrick's Day Parade. We have green fire trucks.
Well, it's good to see the increase was just around $239 over last year's budget. And it really does help what you've done with the ambulance. And I know we talked about that when I was on the board, and it was a relief to see that finally happen, because that was a big savings, especially since you're 100% volunteer, you know. And
Yeah, for us, you know, it wasn't really difficult to do that because we didn't have paid firefighter paramedics like they do in Fayetteville and Manlius. So when we decided to do that, it was not that it was simple, but it was a lot simpler procedure than dealing with, you know, the union and the firefighter paramedic type of, you know, employee. So, but we had to do something, and this has worked out. If anything, our service went up, our response times went up, everything was an increase. You know, we're able to maintain and take care of everything like we did before when we ran it ourselves, but it really bettered. We weren't going to go backwards and have something and do something that was going to, you know, decrease what our residents expect from us. And if anything, we increased that response and increased our service. It's, I don't even can remember the last time we were out of service. And back when we ran it, we were out of service, you know, quite a bit, and that would put a stress on Fayetteville and Keys and a lot of our neighbors. So it was, you know, it goes back to just thinking outside the box, and Mayor Donovan, you know, put out an RFP that was pretty much open to get ideas on what can we do. We just wanted to hear ideas of what's the best way to do something without losing, you know, our identity, which is important in a small village. You know, I think at this point, people realize the way it doesn't matter what it says on the side of the truck, as long as we respond and we're there to save lives. And it still says Manoa because we were able to keep our CON, our certificate of need, and worked out great.
Yep, well, very good. Thanks, Mayor. Anybody on the board, before we open it up to the public, have any questions or comments or anything?
I have a couple of questions, Supervisor. A colleague of mine is watching our Zoom meeting and reached out with a couple of questions that I'll relay here.
Yeah, just identify them, Caitlin, so that we know who they are and their address, and so they can be, you know, put in the public hearing minutes.
I'm not sure that they want to be identified. Is that okay, or do we need to?
No, in a public hearing, they have to identify themselves in order to be recognized.
Okay.
I mean, check with Tim. I think that's right. Or not?
I mean, Caitlin, you can ask whatever questions you want to ask.
I'll ask some questions.
Yeah, ask it on your behalf. You know, what the heck, you know?
I love that we have a lawyer that just, you know.
Always reach the Tim.
You don't need a lawyer for.
It's helpful. So one question, why are Manlius Village and Fayetteville Village, why were they working together, Mayor, on procuring new ambulances, but Manoa wasn't included in that?
The problem is we have a different spec on our ambulances. They didn't really, it's not the same type of rigs that they use. And by the time we even, that sort of, you know, I forget how that all came down, but we sort of fell behind on that. But the main reason was the spec just wasn't the same as what we are. They get a little bit bigger unit that's a little bit different. Well, it's a lot different than what we have. And it's a lot more money. Their ambulances are a lot more than what we pay for ours. So that it just didn't fit the spec.
Okay, so it was that that they were just different vehicles, essentially, like both are ambulances, but different in price or cost differences between them. It didn't necessarily make sense for Manoa to participate. Right,
and like I said, we have a certain spec on ours, and it's not as much as what Fayetteville and Manlius has. So it's just, you know, in that case, and plus it's a lot more money, and we didn't want to spend, even though we would get a deal. And they did get a deal and they saved money between the two of them. We're still saving because we bought a less expensive ambulance that fits our needs.
Okay. Second question.
That was a good one, Caitlin.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's all just cropping up in here. Why does Manoa have more fire trucks than Fayetteville and Manlius?
The thing is, on our end of it, we have 2 fire stations, the one in Manoa and the one in Fremont. We cover a lot more of the town than they do. And, you know, our response times through, when we go and be evaluated through ISO and everything else, we meet all the specs for our response time so that we're not penalized, or our residents. If we couldn't meet certain response times, what happens is your insurance rates in your area would go up per individual household, because they would feel if they had a fire or something, you know, we're not responding within the time limit that the ISO and PESH and all the agencies that govern us, and that would increase their insurance premiums. So to be able to maintain things and to get the response times we need, we do have 4 engines, two in Manoa and 2 in Fremont. And Fremont's a lot big, that's a huge area to cover, and we need those. We need those there for those response times.
Okay. There is one.
And I might also add, Caitlin, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
The big thing too is we have the railroad going through Manoa, and that's the main yard that goes, you know, for Syracuse.
Right.
And, you know, I get a confidential report every year on what comes through Manoa, and it's pretty eye-opening. It's pretty, I mean, we're prepared. And to be prepared, we have to have certain equipment to handle, God forbid, something happened in that rail yard.
Right.
So, you know, that's another reason that when we're evaluated for our response times and how we can handle, God forbid, a disaster, we are prepared because of the equipment we have. So that's another big part too of the railroad.
Now, one question that I've been kind of wrestling with, and I remember when I went last year to watch the fire budgets when it's kind of the beginning of all of the years for the villages, for the budget years. When there's a call outside of your district and you're responding, and this would be true for Fayetteville or Manlius, but perhaps you could answer so that I understand it for everybody. Are there additional costs associated with that fall then to the Manlius taxpayers for calls outside of the town?
Well, depending on what type of call, if it's an ambulance call, we're charging. So we're recouping, you know, we have some revenue coming in for that. All of us, you know, fire control looks at who's available, who's close by, and then those departments have to react and respond. So if it's a fire call, of course, like we had the big fire in Bridgeport, I think, when was that, Monday, Tuesday? You know, we had a big structure fire right there on Main Street in Bridgeport. So, you know, everyone is responding to that to take care of, and especially for us, because we're right down the road, you know, to get out there to do it. Is it costing taxpayers money? Well, you know, it's the wear and tear of our machines going down the road. It's, you know, we're out of the area, and that's why you have, like, when we go to something like that, that's going to take most of the morning or part of the day, we got to make sure Fayetteville or someone's down here in Manoa to, you know, cover us. So everyone gets affected by it. It's like a domino effect. And then, you know, by having someone like Fayetteville covering us, now Fayetteville's, you know, if something happens there, you know what I mean? So it's just a domino effect of everyone have to covering everyone to make sure, God forbid, something else happened that was huge. We have equipment that can respond.
Okay.
So I guess the answer is, you know, it's the wear and tear. Every time we pull out of the station and go on a call, you know, the wear and tear of our machines. our people, God forbid if anything happened or anything else. I mean, all those costs, I guess, they're unforeseen costs that we could see, but I guess that's how it would affect, the town residents or even our taxpayers in the village of Manoa.
Okay. Do you, in the surrounding areas around the town of Manlius, are there, and we can talk more about this just as I start to understand better the fire districts. Are there areas outside of the town that the fire departments within the town, including Manlius and Fayetteville, that they're responding to regularly because they don't have their own fire departments, or they're not able to cover the full area?
No, I mean, you can look at our numbers and what do you think, Chief? I mean, we're basically, it's all.
I don't think there's anybody around here that's not properly staffed as best as they can be. There's more mutual aid, I think, during the day, just when your staffing is lower, which in a volunteer service, that's common across the board.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, anything else?
That's all for me.
And
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. I hope I answered your questions.
You did. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor. There is a question in Facebook.
Oh, there we go.
Tim Visser would like to know, does the Village of Manoa ambulance hard bill Manoa for a protection district resident?
Yes, we bill everyone. You got to understand the hard bill and soft bill. If you use our ambulance, and whatever you use, you are billed for the use of that ambulance. Hard bill and soft bill just means we're not going to go to collection for you is soft bill, where hard bill means we're going to go to collection and we're going to go after the money no matter where you live. And the reason is because, number one, why should all the taxpayers pay for that trip that you took in an ambulance and you used our ambulance? And if we wrote that off, then all the residents they're all paying a percentage of that bill because, it has to be paid. When we write it off, we're losing it, the revenue for our fire budget. Number two, what happens a lot of times is, say your insurance, like Mayor Olson used, it's $500, they paid $250. And then what happens is the insurance will pay the resident the difference. And the resident, a lot of times, takes that check and goes out and buys a new TV or refrigerator or whatever they want, and they don't pay us. Now, we see that on the bill, and why shouldn't we go after the money? They got it from their insurance to pay us. They decided not to pay us and go out and spend it on whatever else. So those are the two reasons why we hard bill everyone. And hard billing everyone isn't as bad as it sounds. Like I said, it's just we're going after the money that people have used. Why should all the taxpayers have to pay the difference when you don't pay your bill? Now, if there's hardship, we take care of that. I can understand hardships and, anything, people are having trouble or whatever else. That's totally understandable. And our board looks at every one of those and almost all the time we forgive it because of the circumstances. But on the majority of them, they either get their money and they decide not to pay us, or they, they just don't pay us.
Thank you.
All right. Any other Facebook or, again, no Q&As I don't see. So if there's nothing else, we can make a motion to come out of the public hearing.
So I'll make a motion to come out of the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, now we've all had a chance to listen to Mayor Brazil and the chief, and so we just need to decide if we're ready to make a motion to accept the contract for Manoa Fire Protection District.
So I'll make a motion to accept the contract for Manoa Fire District.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, all of you. Thank you so much. And if anyone ever, Caitlin or anyone has any concerns or questions, I'm always available. Our chief's available, Lisa, my whole staff's available for you. So, just to make sure you understand, I mean, we're a little different because we're all volunteer and it's a little bit different animal, but we still can do, like I said, I have the utmost respect for my guys and our team here because as volunteers, they do it. And we save lives and we protect the town. So I'm real proud of them.
Thank you.
And of course,
Thank
Billy,
you. You have a great night, everyone.
you're welcome to stay on if you want.
Well, it's tempting, but I think I'll go.
Thank you, Mayor.
See you.
Very good. All right, so we're moving on now to item 8, which is, we're just 10 minutes behind, not bad. The 7:30 public hearing on the commercial zoning classification changes. Sarah, I think you have an introduction to talk. Oh, and welcome Jamie to Suffolk here now. I introduced you earlier, but you weren't here, so now it's official.
Okay.
So go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The Planning Process Committee has prepared the revised zoning code for the consideration of the board. There were 3 reasons that motivated us to take on this project. The current codes were written at different times by different people. Some were very detailed and others not detailed enough. Possible uses developed over the decades that were not anticipated. The code did not provide clear enough guidance for our Director of Code Enforcement. And we wanted to make the code easier for the residents and developers to use. Each zoning district in the new version is now written with a standard template. It begins with a purpose and intent so that the resident can understand what we were thinking of when we made this code designation. It provides for design principles so that people know the type of structure that we're looking for in each zone. And it includes permitted uses. In addition, the Planning Process Committee has made a chart that more easily displays all the anticipated uses of commercial property, clearly indicating within which districts such uses are permitted. And I do want to just give you a caveat that if you click the agenda, the chart is pretty tiny and there will be a better version made before we close this hearing. So I just want people to realize that. When I looked at it, I said, oh my goodness, no one can see what that says. So we will be fixing that. The districts are intended to move along a continuum from the least impactful on neighboring residents, the transitional business code, to the potentially most impactful industrial. I would like to thank former councilors John Leffler and Rich Rossetti, Councilor Waters, Planning Board Chair Joe Lupia, Town Clerk Weber, Director of Codes Enforcement Randy Capriati, Deputy Clerk Debbie Wetzel, and Attorney Jamie Supton for their diligent work over many months on this project. Mr. Supervisor, I would like at this point to waive the reading of the public hearing announcement.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So I make a motion to open a public hearing on a local law modifying chapter 155 of the town code.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And carried. All right, what we'll do, since you gave an overview, and I know that at our meeting, our last meeting, we asked the board members, of course, who seem to be having more questions, to fire those off to Sarah and Jamie and so on. If there are any additional questions or comments. I believe we didn't hear anything from the public at that point. Is that correct, Sarah?
I've not seen any letters from the public.
Okay, all right. So we can certainly, unless there's anything else that's needed to be said, we could certainly open that up now to the public if they would like to speak. Again, just acknowledge raising your hand, or in some cases we're getting Facebook acknowledgement. And please just introduce yourselves and your address, and we'll just, 3 to 5 minutes of your comments or questions addressed to the board. Anything? All right. Sarah, is our intention to keep this open to the next board meeting? Is that?
Yes, our plan is to keep it open till October 14th. And we have done some outreach to builders there was, I want to say there was one question that was asked and answered by the telephone from Matt Napolera, if you want to just record that for the public hearing.
Yes, good. And you'll input that information?
Yeah, he basically just had a question about outdoor storage.
Right, okay, good. All right, excellent.
While we're waiting for any further public comment, this has been referred to the planning board since they're the planning body, and they're going to take it up at their meeting on Monday.
Beautiful.
And also there was a presentation to the zoning board, a courtesy presentation for feedback, and Sarah made that presentation, and it was a good conversation and discussion. I believe that they may also, join in or recommend at their next meeting, but they're not required to.
It's also been referred to Onondaga County Planning Board, correct?
It will be once we get we were just kind of waiting for that final format. The deadline is October 1st. And we also have to, because it is a townwide initiative, we have to send it out to all the neighboring municipalities as well.
Okay.
So if we're sending it, I mean, when you say final format, like the document still on the agenda still has notes on it?
The format that Jamie had submitted most recently. So kind of taking in everybody's input.
So I'm just.
Which one that is? There shouldn't be notes on the most recent version.
Yeah, the one on the agenda right now that says.
That was the red line comparison. And we got, I think it was over the weekend, we got the final law format, which is a version of that. And so we had just been doing some behind the scenes correspondence on whether or not you wanted me to put that in the traditional resolution format that we normally use and things like that. So being that it was held open, we were advised that that was okay.
So I guess from that point of view, I would say let's make these sort of editing issues, and then for the next meeting, the fresh versions will be attached to the agenda, and anybody who wants to see whatever we did as far as cleaning it up, that they will have access to that.
They were all clerical in nature, so.
Well, that's good.
We can certainly get that ahead of time. It was virtually ready today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Okay, because I mean, I'm still looking through the one that was up there, and I see some issues here and there, and so maybe those have been taken care of, but it's hard to look at it when it's not final.
Yeah. So Elaine, I guess I would ask you if you do see things to let us know, because we might have, you can read something 10 times and still miss an error. So
I apologize. I was hoping to send it to you sooner, but I read it 30 minutes before the meeting. So
no problem. You
at
have
least like a detailed read before the meeting.
Elaine, we can
time by the next meeting.
Elaine, we can send you what we have as the final. It's just not in a resolution form right now. It's only in a local law form. So I intend to have it in a resolution form by the next meeting.
Okay, and I still have questions, but should I just send them to Sarah and Jamie? Or?
You can ask them now.
You can ask them now if you want to, but if you want to send them to us, we will try to answer them.
No, yeah, I think I'll say, the only one that was like the biggest one was just more like, if a business can use the new transitional business district, couldn't they use the neighborhood shopping? Like the districts are so, the changes or the variations in them are so small. Why would someone choose TB when they could just go for NS? Is my question.
I think the intent was to make it so that there wasn't such a drastic jump between the different commercial zoning classifications from my perspective and hearing things from the group. And so the reason that John Loeffler had originally created the chart was to just kind of show those places where you had a district that was, you know, one was here and then there was just such a large gap between uses with the other one.
Do you know if there's an example? Because I think if I could see that example, maybe I could follow.
An example of
like where the use is one way and then it jumps to the other.
Like
yeah, absolutely. In terms of, you know, this was a general overall town perspective that the committee looked at. So it was looking at, you know, it was mostly the jump, and Sarah, you can
So I think
chime in here
the
too.
lot that is the easiest to talk about because it was one that was real is the property that used to be the Wellington House. It's commercial on one side because the hotel is commercial. It's R1 on the other side. And it's got a mall across the street. So it doesn't, it doesn't sort of fit in to where what we were, so that's an example of property where, how about taking a half step? We don't have to jump all the way to commercial when we're backing right up against residential.
And to be clear, there is nothing in the town that is zoned transitional business. So it's a zone without a home right now, but it is there for the board's consideration in a zone change, because everything is currently zoned in the town. In a zone change where someone says, hey, I want to be commercial B, and we're like, yeah, maybe not. How about this zone? It's more appropriate for the area. So a place that is a transition between a residential and business use can have a home instead of just a rejection of a zone change. Because some of the uses in the less restrictive zones are so intense that you can't, someone might say, oh, I want to have a little mom and pop retail shop. But if they're zoned CB, then you can have, you know, a big box store, and you don't really want that. So that's why that's.
Then they're not able to compete with them either too. It's sort of the what you could rent something for or lease space for, right, changes so much too. Yeah. May I just say that I think that a good example, Elaine, would be, I'm thinking of a particular home that I know of in the city of Syracuse that a young woman owns, and she lives on top, and it's zoned to be open to be a little small retail business on the bottom. She's an artist who has a gallery there now. So it's sort of low impact, not a lot of traffic, all those sorts of things. And, you know, I know that we have, I see that as the kind of half step, another example of the half step.
But wouldn't that fit? So that wouldn't fit in RM, that kind of small store, right? But
I guess I just want to say it currently would fit in RM. Part of what we want to do is when we finish the commercial districts is tighten up RM, that RM is the one that's too big.
Yeah, and I will just say, Lane, you know, as I mentioned the last meeting, if you have any more of these, reach out to Jamie and Sarah before the next, when we continue on, because we're going to be meeting. Okay. You're going to meet with the planning board, I think you said, Jamie, right? And went over that. So we still have a lot of open-ended things to discuss. So you have plenty of time to get those questions out to them, and you can, you know, have a lot of conversation there. Okay.
And as we said before, and I think Sarah has said to all the boards, we really do want the input. And your questions are good. We are not taking any personal offense in any of it.
Right. Yep. Very good. All right. So since we're leaving this open, okay, that's good for the next meeting. Then we can move on to item number 9, which again is what Mayor Olson was just referring to, the IMA for the sidewalk installation and maintenance. I think you've all had a chance to see Tim's redlining on this. And Tim, can you bring us up the date where you are now with the with the contract and their legal counsel.
Sure. I made some changes to the IMA. They're mostly legal changes. They're not substantive changes in terms of the theory or the process to get the sidewalk in. I did talk to him. I talked to the village attorney today, and he agreed to the changes. So, yeah, I guess the big issue that I am most concerned about is that if there comes a day when the village decides they don't want to keep and maintain this anymore, or they want to get out of the contract, then it'll be our responsibility. And that is there's no real good way to force the village to keep that sidewalk because it's going to be on our right of way. So it's not without any risk. The risk is very small because the village wants to have the sidewalk there. And I just want to make sure that they keep and maintain it. Anybody have any questions for me about the IMA?
Real quick, Tim, so when we read the second recital there where it talks about the 5-year term, that continues to get renewed, and we're the landlord on this, I take it, and we just continue to renew that every 5 years? Is that
Yeah, because at first they wanted a 20-year IMA, but I don't think by state law you can have a 20-year intermunicipal agreement. So I've requested that we have a 5-year terms that will automatically renew unless the town decides that it doesn't want to stay in the contract.
Oh, okay. Good. I just wanted to be sure of that. Thank you. Anybody else?
So, I mean, I just, as a comment, I think it seems like a pretty good deal. I know I've walked that area quite a bit. Definitely excited to see some sidewalks leaving the villages and hopefully set us on a path forward to maybe doing a little bit more of that. I guess my question probably for Tim, do we need like a public hearing for something like this?
Nope.
And now, have we notified residents in the town that's on this 475-foot path?
I think I'll let Sarah answer that, but my understanding is that there's only one residence on that 400 and whatever feet. Most of it is the Wellington House.
Yeah, Russ Maxwell.
Yeah, so the two residents, the one on the corner and the one who lives in the Wellington, Mr. Maxwell, have been, and they are supportive. They have no objection to it. And one of them will lose some landscaping and he was still okay with it, so.
And so, like, let's say in 5 years, for some reason, the village doesn't want to re-up this. Would we be in a situation where we would have to remove it or build or put together a sidewalk district?
Well, yeah, I mean, if the village, I've tried to build into it enough that they're on the hook for keeping it. But if there comes a day when they say, we just don't want to be in this contract anymore, we'd have to go to court and try to enforce that. But yeah, either we would pull the sidewalk up and not maintain it, or hire somebody to maintain it.
Okay, because I think, if that's, that's definitely a concern, but I do think in terms of what we'd be getting and the term, especially as the contract is written, I think it's a pretty reasonable risk for us to take, for, I think, a real big added value for, a lot of residents.
Honestly, John, when the mayor called me, and it was actually probably a year ago or so when he first mentioned it to me, and he said, "Look, yeah, we'll build it, we'll maintain it, we'll talk to them, we'll have our legal counsel work." And I'm thinking, okay, let me see that win, I think. Yeah. So I said, well, when you're ready to make the move, just let me know. And I sort of missed the the minutes of the last board meeting where they brought it up, but I appreciate Sarah for bringing that to our attention. But I knew they were working on it, so it seems like it's going to work out well.
Anything else?
Yeah, Sarah, I just want to make sure about snow removal. These will be maintained. I think now anything over 3 inches of snow.
Yeah, the village has a snowplow system for what they do with sidewalks, and I don't want to, put in the minutes that if there's a 4-foot blizzard that they'll plow it in the morning. You know, there's limits of what they're able to do. But I
Right.
think that, you know, it's part of their routine sidewalk maintenance schedule if this goes through. So I do think we have a reasonable expectation of it being plowed regularly.
And do you know how long it's going to take to construct?
Apparently only like they're going to do it this fall before frost. So I think it only takes maybe a month to build it.
Oh, good.
And we were concerned
Karen,
about the liability thing too, you know, so I think that was taken care of.
Yeah, there is a liability clause in there.
Right.
I tried to make it so that the village would keep the same schedule that they use for themselves for this sidewalk. So that's the language I tried to put in there.
Good.
Anything else? So I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign the IMA with subject to legal review.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Very good. Thank you, everyone. It's been a long time coming since we first talked. So that's great. And you'll get all that to get the final version to us all, Tim, right?
Yeah.
Good there. All right, so we'll move on to, we need the tax cap, of course, is part of the budget process, and therefore traditionally, as we have done, we need to set a date for the public hearing, local law to override the property tax cap. Tim, could you give an overview of the thought process behind that and our reasons why we do this, just so to bring everybody up to speed?
Yeah. Under the law, if we are over the property tax cap and we don't override the property tax cap, there would be a penalty that would be assessed by the controller's office. My recollection is that we'd have to set aside at least the amount of money that we went over the tax cap and reduce taxes in future years by that, which would, of course, require us to raise more money. But we're trying to do something to prevent a penalty in the future. It's something we've commonly done, and we've always tried to stay below the tax cap. And I think there's only one year where it was actually above the tax cap, the budget. But we're doing this kind of as a preventative measure.
Yeah, that was, I mean, obviously when I saw this on the agenda, I did a little research. I think a lot of us did. And I think the easiest way to understand is, this is a safety measure. We absolutely want to stay under the tax cap, but we do this so that we don't have a penalty later on. And it's really a safety measure, quite honestly, for us, if we, have to, go slightly over the tax cap.
And John, that's a good point, because we could, and when we're done with the budget, we could show, yeah, we're under the property tax cap, and then the comptroller looks at our calculations and says, whoa, wait a minute, I think you're off a little bit here, So again, it's a protection for that part of it as well, So, but it hasn't happened, so that's a good thing. So,
It's an insurance policy.
yes, right. Good way of putting it, Karen. Excellent. So we need to set a date. I think the resolution says October 14th. Is that correct?
Yes, and you have public hearing, Fayetteville 6:35, and then the commercial zoning classification at 6:40, so this would be 6:45.
All right, so we'll need a motion to set that.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to set the public hearing on the local law to override the property tax cap for October 14th at 6:45.
Excellent.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Excellent. And on to item 11, which is the CIRO office contract with the East Syracuse Manoa School District for Tristan Campbell. I think, again, this is standard that we've just recently gone through with SPOs and CIROs. So I think it's a standard procedure here, unless, again, anyone has any comments or questions regarding that. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, the only comment I had was I looked back at some of the other CIRO agreements we had done, and there was like a breakdown at the end. One of them, this one was 10 pages. I think the last one for ESM was 11 pages. And I think, especially if I was a resident looking at these agendas, I really liked the breakdown. It was like, all the different costs associated with this, and I felt it was a really helpful piece in that. I didn't see it in this one, and I just wanted to express that, I thought it was really useful, and if it's not too much of a hassle to see that moving forward, I think would be really great for, transparency's sake.
That's a good point, John. I mean, there was quite a bit of, some negotiation with the superintendent and the chief to make sure we got to those items. So I agree. I think if we have those, chief, we have those in the other ones, so we can add those, right, Tim? So, all right, so if we want to make a motion and, add that page, does that make sense? Tim, to do it that way, are we amending it or not, the contract?
I mean, I don't think we need to amend it to vote on it. I'm just saying, moving forward, I thought it was a really nice practice, and I'd like to, if possible, see that, moving forward with the other contracts.
Okay, all right, very good. All right.
Yeah.
Need a motion for the agreement.
Right. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize you to sign the CIRO contract for Tristan Campbell at the ESM School District.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. Very good. All right, so we've got a lot of that completed and a few more items. All right, we're going right to Rob now, it looks like. So, Rob, do you have anything for us this evening?
Actually, I'm all set tonight, Mr. Supervisor. I guess the only thing I'd like to report is this week, unfortunately, I know it's the end of September, but we started ripping down 2 trucks to put snowplows on. So get ready, guys.
It's like you should have a little, next time I'm going to bring my son's like keyboard and play dun, 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 or some, or whatever, some ominous music.
Unfortunately, but I will like to say we're going to be ready because we have, we've plowed on Halloween before. So it takes us some time to get it together. But other than that, I don't have anything to report tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Randy, do you have anything for us this evening?
Yeah. Inspections right now are starting to slow down slightly. And the reason for it is the contractors are having a terrible time with demand. They can't get concrete. Concrete's at least 2 weeks out for any project that's being done right now. Material they can't find, and the labor, nobody wants to work. They can't find the people to do it either. So we're coming to a slow right now, and then it's going to pick up threefold because once the concrete is available, everybody's going to want all inspections all at once, along with material. So that's a struggle for the contractors right now. It gives our office a chance to get caught up, which is good, but it's going to come fast and furious in the next month or two when other stuff becomes available. So other than that, the fire inspections are going good with Dave. He's calling them individually, meeting with the owners, getting into these places a lot of times either after hours or early morning hours prior to the business's opening. And Mike's doing a great job with all the stuff he's doing with the pools and everything else. So we're moving right along.
Very good. Sounds good, Randy. Nice job. Item 13 point, I guess that's 1. CNY Stormwater Coalition Staff Services and Education Resolution. Is this something for you, Doug, or is this you, Randy? Who's going to be presenting this?
That's the item we spoke about last meeting.
Right. Okay.
Right. The support by regional planning for staff support, education outreach, and direct municipal support from Kathy Bertucci. Same price as 2020. So the recommendation was to get authorization for the supervisor to sign that resolution that Kathy provided for us.
What was the amount again on that? Is that $3,600 per?
Yep, $3,600. Same as this year.
Yeah, pretty standard. Okay. All right. Any questions, comments regarding this? If not,
I would just want to say that there was on the community outreach part, there, some of the language was copied from before, and I just think we need to do more with the social media and the other kinds of ways of communicating. She's probably doing that, but the contract doesn't really spell, you know, it still talked about putting things in the newspaper. And I just think we need, and when you talk to her, if you could just say, you know, we really need to be expanding the ways we perceive communication. If we're
I can
gonna
do that. I can do that, Sarah. I'll see Kathy around.
That's a good suggestion.
She's easy to approach.
Yeah, very good.
I think especially when, like, you know, because there's a nice schedule in there as to when things go out and stuff. And I think maybe, I understand that this is not a massive operation, but like by modernizing the communication a little bit, like if we could have had some information go out wholesale after some of the pretty crazy rainfalls we'd had earlier this year, I think that would have been a great, because like this is definitely one of those things, people don't care about it until, you know, I think, Doug, as you told me, until their lawn's wet. So, you know, this is, I feel, you know, if we can shift some of that to the more social media stuff, especially like looking at like next door, like if we could have some like real modifications to the plan, you know, maybe take away a newspaper article and then push more out on social, especially targeted when it's after an event like this, I think you'd get a lot more purchase, and I think we'd get a lot more out of all of the communications that are involved in this.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll bring that up with her. She's pretty approachable.
Oh, I appreciate that, because I think, you know, you look at it and it's like, obviously they like, this is all about, you know, teaching people things. And so any way that we can engage people a little bit easier, I think would be a huge win for us.
Yep, I agree.
All right.
I worked with Kathy when I was employed at the CNYRPDB when I ran the Solar Ice campaign. She's super nice and very, very, very smart. So it's cool to have her working in our community on such a important issue.
She's my parents' neighbor too.
Really?
Yeah,
She's everywhere.
she is.
So we'll need any other conversation. We'll need a motion to accept the scope of services. So we
I'll
can,
make a motion, Mr. Supervisor, to accept the services from the CNYRPDB for the CMY Stormwater Coalition.
And I'll second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Thank you, Doug, on that. And some of the suggestions that Sarah recommended. That sounds good. All right, moving on to our Attorney Fortescue. What do you have for us, Tim?
Just an update on the lease with Abundant Solar. I did have some discussions with them over the last week. They've agreed to the changes that I've requested, so I think we're going to probably have the final copy ready, or the final lease ready by Friday for Ed to sign.
Beautiful. Good, good. Thank you. Allison?
Nothing.
That was it?
No, I have nothing to report. Just very busy.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Chief, what do you have for us tonight?
So special patrol officers, we hired one, and Allison swore that individual in, and he's already started at the FM school district and doing well. We have that second opening, which is available. We've already started accepting resumes, and we'll start background and various interviews for that position. So I'll keep the board posted on that. Secondly, continue to work with the district attorney on the governor's executive order 203. And I've already formed 3 committees, which is my responsibility on that side, and we'll be coming up with some recommendations for countywide recommendations for every agency in Onondaga County. Number 3, the building, we're getting through the building renovations. It's a little tough because it's getting pretty heavy right now, but thank you to the board for approving, the board and the village for approving that trailer. A lot of us have swung out to the trailer, which has been really a great opportunity for us to continue our day-to-day operations because the building right now is pretty much a mess. Traffic enforcement, we're into our phase 4 now on reopening on COVID. So we've received so many complaints on traffic. We're really starting to get aggressive on traffic enforcement. In particular this week, we had multiple traffic units out looking at things like seatbelt enforcement, speed enforcement, and specifically school speed limits. So just so you're aware, we're being very active. That was in education phase 1, and phase 2 is enforcement. So hopefully we'll slow people down and increase the safety in those areas. Sergeant's promotion, I'll be doing interviews probably this week on sergeants and promoting a sergeant because we have a vacancy right now, and it's real important to have first line supervision. And then lastly, I think today our annual community satisfaction survey went out. This is an annual survey we do with a randomly selected group of town residents that's representative of the entire town. And there's 25, 26 questions that we ask folks to respond to, and they range everywhere from police services to competency of the police department to the type of services that they would like to see from their police department. This is something we've been doing for probably 15 or 20 years with Maxwell House. And there's a student from Maxwell House that actually arranges those questions and compiles the data. And once that data is all put together after the survey is complete, I'll share that with the town board. That's all I have.
That was good. A lot of good stuff there, Chief. Thank you very much for that. And keeping us informed with the committee that you're on and the 3 additional ones now that have been added. All right, Town Manager, Ann, what do you have for us this evening? Nothing. I know you're muted, so I'm guessing, oh, there we go.
No, just like Allison said, very busy, but no one really is interested in the boring budget and all those things I do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Well, we have the town board next. What I'm thinking is we'll go to, is the recreation budget transfer, is that Karen or is that Heather that's going to address that?
Well, I can certainly do that. We do have the employee appointment for our leader administrator. This is a vacant position, and we're very fortunate to have that filled by one of our instructors that have been with us for many, many years, a teacher, and we look forward to having her on the staff as a part-time basis in this leadership role. So we would need a motion for her appointment. If Heather, you would like to do that?
Sure, thank you, Karen. I'd like to move to vote on filling this vacancy, please.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, carried, very good.
And then, Mr. Supervisor, we will need a motion for a transfer request for $800. This will also is due to facilitate that position. And we need a transfer for $800 from the cell phone budget to office supplies.
Gotcha.
And Karen, isn't that to ensure that a laptop can be, or sorry, that the technology support for this new hire can be?
Precisely.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I remembered that correctly.
Yeah. So I'll be happy to make that motion for the transfer.
Happy to second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried, very good. And I know that Peter, I hope I get it right, Montiglio and Anna O'Brien have been patiently waiting. And Heather, obviously this is regarding to the issues up on in the Signal Hill area.
Yeah.
The noise ordinance, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, thank you. let me just briefly explain why I'm sort of bringing it to the board. Bringing forward to the board this topic of noise control in our code, our current code, related to recent contact the counselors have had with a large group of neighbors from Signal Hill, but also from Brookside, Briarbrook, Do Good Run, and Golden Acres. Issue has previously sort of shown up in our work as individual neighbors asking the town to interpret the law to help them liaise with jurisdictions like our police, or maybe they were communicating to us information from the Green Lake State Park Police, the DEC, or the Village of Fayetteville. And so there's been, you know, a long history of, and also with codes too, a long history of communication and concerns that are under the heading of noise, and also in some cases safety concerns. I do believe, after everything that I've heard from the neighbors over time, and other counselors, you know, can share their thoughts on this, and of course you have experience with this too, Mr. Supervisor, I believe that we have, you know, sort of leaders in all the areas of the jurisdictions who, and our police department, of course, with Chief Kroll, who are very willing and very interested in being responsive to the community and to these concerns. I believe that, but I think we have an opportunity to understand and to hear from this group of people who have come together as a collective. They've reached a point where they're coordinated and having conversations about what their issues are, and they need us to listen to where the situation is, so that we can understand better how it might be possible to move forward for quality of life issues in the town. So that's where we are now. And I really offer this moment not to have an extended sort of debate, but rather to bring this up so that the board can consider looking at the noise law that we have, and also make sure we're not missing any tricks when it comes to the safety issues, and that any coordination that needs to happen or that we're going to recommit to, you know, can happen. And so I know that residents have come together, and we've got both Anna O'Brien and Peter, I want to make, your name is right here, but Peter Bonfiglio, thank you, Peter, who are here, and you're going to introduce them, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yes, I know that, Anna, good to see you again.
Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ed. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Mr. Supervisor. I forgot to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to just summarize also, before this moment, we, and coming up, we had spoken with neighbors and asked, you know, sort of how would they like to come forward, or how could they give us some more information? And we did receive, I did a quick survey of this information. We received from 38 different households, 55 letters, and 54 of them were concerns about noise and safety related to a neighbor. In the case of Signal Hill, they are in the Village of Fayetteville jurisdiction, and their neighbor is part of the town of Manlius, and their neighbor is shooting. And so there were concerns about noise and about safety, but there was a single letter, and there might be one other, I didn't see the other one, but one letter from someone who definitely wanted to share an opposite perspective. One where they thought that neighbors were, this was not a concern to them, and they thought that neighbors were giving this person perhaps a hard time for exercising the right to shoot on their property. So just to summarize that and make sure that that frame is in front of folks and that context is there.
Thank you for that, Heather. In fact, believe me, the letters we received, and yeah, there were two that, you know, had different opinions, but we have read all of them, and some in duplicate form, which is sort of like signing a petition, really, of a concern, but signed by different people, but the same content of the letter is what I mean. But again, the point has been made, and I know that we had met a couple of years ago, Anna, and we really tried to work a lot of this out, and things seem to have gotten better. And then I guess of late, it seemed to have increased. but I don't want to get into all that, the weeds of all that, okay? What I'd like to do is hear from you and Peter, and I think we've all agreed we'll try to keep it at 5 minutes each. And then we'll address these concerns as Heather pointed out regarding probably the noise ordinance or the noise issues with the firing of the weapons. Okay, so go ahead, and whoever wants to start.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So if I can introduce myself, my family and I live in a condo in Signal Hill, very near where the shooting events occur on East Genesee Street. Signal Hill is just one of several neighborhoods that Councilor Waters mentioned that are impacted by the shooting. And so these are densely populated residential areas, and this shooting occurs in the center. Also bordering this shooting area is Green Lake State Park, with the Indian Oven, the power line, and the Brookside Trails in close proximity. So I've had the pleasure of speaking with many neighbors in these areas, but one thing that's been clear is that the shooting concerns a large number of people. I've heard them say things like, how can this be allowed so close to residential areas? It's like being in a war zone. It scares our kids. It distresses our pets. Things like, it wasn't like this when we moved here several years ago. Or we cannot visit with our friends on our deck because we can't hear each other talking. It's so loud. I want to focus my comments now on the issue of noise, and my neighbor, Mr. Bonfiglio, will speak after about the public safety concerns. The shooting has been disturbing these neighborhoods for more than 2 years, but this spring it was especially bad. And that's when everyone was doing more from home. The shooting disrupted neighbors attempting to work from home with the noise of the shooting in the background of their Zoom meetings. It disrupted children trying to participate in school remotely. Most recently, a couple weeks ago, there was a steady shooting for an hour on a Wednesday morning, which is when the entire FM school district is remote learning. Our child was trying to do their math lesson and we had to stop because he was so agitated by the incessant shooting. I have to reassure our children that they are safe, even though I don't know that this is true, especially when they're playing outside. The prolonged and loud shooting often happens, for example, on otherwise beautiful and peaceful Sunday mornings when people are virtually joining their faith communities to worship. Over the course of a typical shooting event, the noise increases louder and louder. It's sustained for 30 minutes to an hour, even 2 hours long. Neighbors have measured the noise level using cell phone apps to reach sustained levels in the 80 to 90 decibel range. Especially concerning are the very loud booms as though something has exploded, which come at the end of the shooting events. These explosions are so loud they shake our windows and they terrify our children. Why should we have to put up with this? The town noise ordinance states that it is the policy, and I quote, the policy of the town of Manlius to prevent unreasonably loud, disturbing, and unnecessary noise, end quote. Later, it defines unnecessary noise as, and I quote, any excessive or unusually loud sound, or any sound which either annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of a reasonable person of normal sensibilities, end quote. So I want to know, why has this noise ordinance not been enforced despite the repeated calls from neighbors? Last month, Councilor John Deere came to our Signal Hill neighborhood at our request so that he could witness one of these shootings himself. And with the many letters that all of the town board has now received, I think all of our councilors are now aware of this issue. And I ask that you either find a way to enforce our current ordinance or please fix it. The town of DeWitt has a quantitative noise ordinance that limits daytime noise levels to 50 decibels when measured on an adjoining property. The town of Manlius can do better than we currently are to preserve and protect our quality of life. So I ask you to please give this issue the attention it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Peter, did you want to add, you want to go ahead and add your part, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. In addition to Anna's comments, I just wanted to spend a few minutes and talk about our safety concerns. Bear in mind, if you would, that we try to do a lot of research on the safety side. We did so with, I think, the collaborative spirit of 86-1 in mind, to try to find a win-win solution in a very difficult and what seems like an intractable problem. But as the further we went to dig in, I think the more we found ourselves increasingly frustrated by roadblocks and dead ends that we encountered. So we're now at the point, I think, of calling upon the town board to help us resolve issues on our behalf that we just can't seem to find a way to resolve. But with respect to the safety of a firearm near populated areas, we in particular seem to be caught up in this perfect storm of haphazardly written regulations, kind of finger pointing between agencies and jurisdictions, or for a while just an apathy to what appeared to be an isolated problem. So as you may know, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, in an attempt to avoid conflict between hunters and homeowners, has restricted the discharge of a firearm within 500 feet of a domicile, right? But at the same time, Onondaga County is designated as one of 12 counties in New York State that explicitly prohibits the use of a rifle to hunt deer or bear. So with that in mind, we're kind of struggling between how you can have a restriction that's the 500-foot restriction that concerns any firearm discharge, but the rifle restriction only applies to hunting. So it sort of makes no sense to us how you can't hunt with a rifle in Onondaga County because of the population density, because of the relatively flat topography that the statute was written for, but yet you can discharge that same high caliber rifle 501 feet away from somebody sitting on their back deck. And so to me, the 500-foot rule makes sense if you were talking about shotgun hunting, maybe for waterfowl, where a shot pellet would have little to no penetrating force after traveling that distance, but a 50 caliber bullet can travel miles. When I say miles, I do mean miles. So then we kind of ask, why are we measuring our safety in the town based on the DEC's interest? It seems to be more about responsible land use. It's not clear that whether they're setting protocols based on some ballistics analysis in science or math, or just on preserving hunting access. So for example, when I inquire with the DEC as to why is it 500 feet, why not 1,000? The answer seemed to be more about compromising for public wealth than about public welfare, that at 1,000 feet, I was told you would significantly reduce the amount of huntable land in the state. So this 500-foot restriction may make someone feel safer if they're locked inside their home, but there don't seem to be any restrictions on shooting near a property line, a property border. So the adjoining portion of Signal Hill development, for example, is not really usable to us, given the proximity to the firearm discharge. We could never build a tennis court or a gazebo down there that was 550 or 200 feet away from a target. And if that sounds alarmist, I would kind of invite you to come and stand at our property line while the range was in use. Then we, of course, fair warning that I wouldn't feel safe enough to join you down there during that time. So we seem to be challenged that there are laws on the books that protect shooting range operators, but we can't seem to find any legislative concerns for the residents nearby. New York State Senate Article 10, Section 150, for example, is written in defense for range owners subjected to noise complaints. The urging would seem from a national lobbyist initiative, and while I'm not objecting in any way to the rights of range owners to represent their collective interest, we sort of need the town of Manlius in turn to embrace and defend our safety concerns, to advocate on our behalf, and in part because we don't know what we don't know. For example, in addition to the ability to just change discharge risks of discharging a firearm in populated areas, we can't find any statutes that address the use of metal targets, which professional shooting organizations describe as a shoot at your own risk activity, given the risk of reflection or rebound. New York State and the FBI have regulated the sale and use of the explosive compound tannerite, which is used in explosive targets, which makes for a fun experience. But tannerite was meant to be used in small quantities, and its misuse, according to the FBI, can create powerful and explosive discharges, including reports of bystanders being injured by flying shrapnel. So in addition to the disturbances that Anna raised, I would also kind of add an emotional safety, perhaps, to our list of a concern. The sound of a 50 caliber ammunition discharge or exploding targets where they to be used creates an atmosphere that's more like a military arsenal, quite frankly, than a sporting club. We have neighbors who suffer from anxiety, PTSD, frightened children and pets. We even have one neighbor who bought a house 2 years ago, refuses to move in, given the proximity to the activity. And likewise, we have residents of the town who are no longer comfortable walking the Green Lake State Park through the Brookside or Old Growth trails. From our neighborhoods, there's little to no direct natural topographical features to protect hikers from an errant bullet. There are undesignated trails to and from the power line trail near the Indian Ovens that can place hikers unwittingly in the line of fire. And I say line of fire literally, not hyperbolically. We've tried in vain to engage the park police in this issue. We seem to be running headlong into some conflict of interest or answerability to the state that leaves our complaints falling on deaf ears. We were kind of told that, well, since no one's been injured yet by shooting oriented into the park, we have no reason to complain. We just find that unacceptable. We have to wait for someone to be injured or worse before we take action. So again, we'd ask for advocacy from the board to engage with the park police or the park manager on our behalf to study the terrain and the risks to residents of the town that are utilizing this wonderful and local treasure. So I just implore you to reconsider our reliance, perhaps, on arm's length regulatory bodies to establish the rules by which we characterize how we protect the life and quality of life of the residents here in the town. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns.
Thank you, Peter. I let you go a little longer because it went shorter than you did. So we're all evened up here.
Thank you, appreciate that.
No, you're fine. Before I pass it off to my expert legal counsel and our police chief, I do know that I've spoken with Rob Hiltbrand, and he has rest assured me that all the safety precautions that they have required through the park police have been satisfied in that regard. But again, that's another thing we can certainly have a further discussion with them. With that, I really need to pass this off to Tim regarding some of the legalities here regarding not just safety, but we can talk a little bit about the ordinance that was that Anna had talked about too, as far as the noise and so on. Mr. Gary Rain, I'm pronouncing that, he actually sent a nice spreadsheet of the activity since May 16th, which I think that was that one Saturday that was a couple hours of shooting. And it's really interesting. It's broken down anywhere from a half hour, to an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it's not every day, it's hit and miss, it's weekends, it's sometimes during the week. But again, this doesn't really, you can't hear this by reading it, You're living it, so you hear it. And the impact is probably greater on your end, even though it's sparingly with the number of times he goes out and shoots. It's the matter of how loud it is during those occasions. So with that, Tim, can you help us out here a little bit with regard to noise ordinance and as far as they mentioned the decibels and DeWitt and so on, the 50 decibels, Chief, maybe you are familiar with that. So I hand it off to you, Tim.
Our noise ordinance does not have a standard in it, which is which is a problem. And if you look at noise ordinances that have been challenged, the reason they're challenged is because they have language like ours has that says extreme or things that can't be measured. So we would have to really look at putting in standards like decibel levels, like the town of DeWitt has, in order for us to be able to enforce it in a court of law. The decibel levels, I don't know that I think I heard Anna say that they've been measured at different areas and they were at 90 decibels. Is that correct, Anna? Okay. That is a measurable violation if it were instituted in our code. That's the way we would have to go. But many times the readings are not as clear cut or clean cut as you would think they would be. And we would definitely have to have some kind of provision within the police department that they have the resources to be able to measure those kinds of things at the property line. So if you're asking me how to improve our noise ordinance to cover a situation like that, like the one that's being described, that's the way we would do it.
Tim, if you don't mind for a second. So as Anna did say, thank you both for joining us and giving us, your perspective on this. I did go down there one day and there was, this shooting was difficult to deal with. I can't even imagine having to listen to that. It's bad enough that you hear somebody start a lawnmower too early, or you got a dog or a car alarm. And I do want to thank all the law enforcement agencies that have been involved in this, especially our own police department. When I was there, I believe I spoke with Sergeant Snyder, and we did have a conversation about the difficulty of enforcing a law that has words like extreme as opposed to measurable, actual things that we can measure and enforce. I think the DeWitt ordinance is a very good starting place. I do think we can add some nuance to it. I think there should be something in there about how long a sustained noise can be. Perhaps I was discussing this with Councilor Bollinger, some kind of permitting process so that, if somebody does plan or want to make noise, they would be able to let us know. That way the police could know and say, we absolutely understand this. However, they do have a permit from this time to this time. We can look into something like that. I do think DeWitt's ordinance is a really good starting point. But again, you look at our noise ordinance, it's been on the books since '96. I don't know how long DeWitt's has been there, but we can, there's no reason we can't take something that seems really good and really think about it, how we can make it better. Because at the end of the day, this is not a law change or a new law that would be specifically solving one issue. I've talked to people who want reliable ways to be able to report other noise violations. Like I said, a car alarm or a dog or heavy equipment. And by creating a law that is, one, ideally easy to understand and easier to enforce. Tim, thank you for pointing out it's not always perfect, but I just looked again at the DeWitt noise ordinance. It's daytime, it's 70 decibels, and after that, it's 50 decibels measured at the adjoining property line. What I will say is when I was there that day, we had a number of officers from different agencies. We had a number of concerned citizens. We had someone from the the Signal Hill Homeowners Association, and it was frustrating. And I will say that, not to take away from how anybody handled the situation, but it was frustrating because there wasn't a clear solution other than we'll see. And so that's why I think when we think about writing laws, no different than zoning, the zoning should serve the residents. And if the residents want, for example, a transitional business district so that we can figure out where certain businesses belong, that's good. And we should try to make laws that reflect that. The same way that if residents have an issue with excessive noise, we should make sure that the law is a good law that's enforceable, easy to understand, so that everyone gets exactly what they need, because there is an assumption that when you buy a house in the town of Manlius, that there is some assumed right to peace and quiet. And the one nice thing is there's precedence here. There is a noise ordinance on the books that isn't sufficient to meet our current needs. Just the same way we didn't have laws to talk about cell phone towers, things change. We build new developments, people move closer, different people buy properties, and that's fine. You know, this isn't to target any specific person. This is to make a law that we have on the books better, to better serve our residents. And at the end of the day, that's what we do. We serve the residents. So again, thank you both for coming. And I do think while the safety concerns are thank you so much for telling us straight out. And, you know, like I said, it's hard to imagine being there and having to deal with that, you know, multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a month. But I do think, you know, when we think about how government can be fairly slow, I think some of the counselors here have learned that this year. It's a little slower than you would expect. I do think this is a really good place to start. And I'm not saying that we're only going to focus on it, but when we think about what can we start doing right now to start making life better for some residents, I think this is something we can really focus on and really make some progress with while we explore the other issues that we're seeing.
Very good, John. Tim, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. This may be part of the conversation once we get into this, but you know, with the current Rod and Gun Club that is in Manlius, I do know that the neighborhoods or that area have a covenant that they understand that they're moving into a Rod and Gun Club area, and I mean, with that would be part of the conversation here with this noise ordinance, right? As far as how that affects current facilities like that.
No, their covenants are typically put in when houses are built and people are moving into a situation where the covenant would be in place. Houses here are already built,
right?
Okay. And you can't put a covenant on. You wouldn't be able to put a covenant on the houses that are already built.
So Tim, I guess Ed, I think that's a really interesting question. And again, you learn something new every day. Covenants about Rod and Gun Clubs. But could we look towards writing an ordinance that would allow for like an understanding, like established shooting ranges obviously would have we would have to look at something, because it wouldn't be fair to pass a law that basically says, you know, this business can't operate, you know, without breaking the law.
I think, Councilor Deere, the way the Rod and Gun Club is set up, it is way further than 500 feet. Like, you really do not hear the loudness that you're talking about from the neighbors there. My brother and sister-in-law lived across the street, and, you know, you could sort of hear it in the distance, but it was not anything like what you're describing.
Well, Elaine lives closest
I
to it
live
right
there.
now.
It's pretty loud, but it's all right.
I do too, and I can also hear the train in East Syracuse on certain days too. So
Yeah, when I'm up in the middle of the night, I can hear it. So I can only imagine how loud it is for folks in Manoa. I know Randy knows the hours, but the Rod and Gun Club also has established, it's been there since what, the 20s or the 30s, and it has established hours.
it's very early in the morning. I do know that, Heather. Mr. Supervisor, could we possibly look at penalties? I know this has come up in years past when we've had issues with animals, dogs, and so on and so forth, and we've looked at increasing the penalties.
Oh, you mean if someone goes over the noise ordinance, what kind of fine they get?
Right, exactly. I mean, I don't think our penalties are that much. I'd have to look them up, but
I think I've got it in front of me. The way that it's currently written, the penalties for offenses are: the first offense, the penalty is a fine of a maximum of $250. The second offense is an offense within a 6-month period. After that, the penalty is a fine up to the maximum of $375. And for the third and each subsequent offense within a 6-month period, the penalty shall be a fine up to the maximum sum of $500 or imprisonment for a period of not in excess of 15 days, or both such fine and imprisonment.
Wow.
That's what it says now.
There's more than
But it's up to the judge too, right?
It's very typical of a violation. It would be it's not a criminal statute, it's a civil statute, but because it's a violation, it would be considered a violation, not a crime. But you can have up to 15 days of jail with a violation. So it's very.
But we could increase the penalties, the time.
If we're going to look at the entire law, we would look at that.
Yeah, and I think that's, the sense that I got from everybody is, what we have now hasn't been enforced. Therefore, there is some precedent set, and I appreciate that. I mean, I have learned a lot of things in government are just, this is how we've done it. And so that's why I think being able to reassess this, really see, I think perhaps I don't know what the level of technology was in 1996 to understand whether or not they were reliable handheld decibel readers. So maybe the technology has caught up and our laws just need to catch up. Or
there weren't apps then for sure.
But, it seemed, I would think now that we can afford the equipment, I would imagine it's fairly cheap, reliable decibel readers that we could put in, we can make sure all of the officers have. And this way, it's not a question of, is it extreme? It's a scientific measurement.
Yeah.
And if we can move our laws to that, I think it makes it serve people so much better.
Exactly, John. I was just going to say that measurement is what's missing here. And I think that would be something we need to look into, if it's the decibels, of course. And I know, Chief, I think you said you have the capabilities of that right now at your fingertips if need be. So I would, there's no motion to make here, but I would just encourage us to look. Let me see, would that be our planning process committee? Would they be looking at this, Sarah, as far as the codes? Or would that be
I was thinking nose ordinance. I think we're doing land use, so.
Yeah. If the board directs me to look at our existing noise ordinance and try to craft something that will fit not only this situation, but any situation where the decibel level is over 70 decibels, then I'll go forward and do that.
And I think Heather and I are happy to help you with that, Tim. And we can consider this a small committee to work on this. I think, this is definitely something we've taken an interest in, and I'm excited to move this forward because there's many times where it seems like a fairly simple solution to a problem that is causing people issues.
Yep.
I would like to add just a couple thoughts, if I may, before we wrap this part up. Of all of the issues that we've addressed in the town over these last several months, and even, yes, I know it's dinner time, I'm almost done out, and even before we were elected, this is the issue I've heard about the most consistently, the most often over the year. Like, it's been very consistent. And it's where I have felt the most frustrated because there hasn't been a clear solution. And so I appreciate so much that Councilor Waters and Councilor Deere have been able to focus on this and work with this community in Signal Hill and in the surrounding neighborhoods, because I think that it's important that people in local government feel heard, and that their concerns as representatives of them, that they should be our concerns too. And I feel like some of the residents have felt like they have just been running in circles, going to every agency that they can think of to try to get anyone to help them. Because imagine, I can't imagine living in a neighborhood like that, but if it were any one of us, like, imagine just yourself right now with your family and your pets. And I think that it's something that we should remember as we move forward. We should work together collaboratively with these neighbors to build a solution. Hopefully we're able to make it work with the noise ordinance. But if for whatever reason that path forward isn't amenable or isn't something that we're able to do successfully, then this isn't something we should just forget about, because there are dozens of residents of our community that are suffering. And if they don't turn to us, then who are they supposed to turn to? And so I'd like to thank Ms. O'Brien and Mr., we can't just call you Peter, for coming this evening and for sharing so eloquently the thoughts and the feelings and the data and the research that they've done to bring this to us, to help us to be informed. It's just so important that we make sure that this gets addressed and resolved. And I've committed to this group of neighbors that I will work tirelessly until we come up with a solution. And I think we should all commit to doing that together.
Thank you.
Caitlin, thank you for saying that. I just wanted to say too that it's important that every single voice is heard, but I have to say that I'm sort of feeling like, Anna, your kids having each written, your three children having written a note to us explaining their experience. They're asking government to listen to them, and this is one of probably the first very real experiences they have in civics. And so I feel like the stakes are pretty high for how we do this. And I want you to know that I personally will be, and I know all of us will be thinking about that as we proceed.
It's definitely not been like a clear solution. Like I know we all kind of went in the same circles that this community did, calling the parks, calling, I talked with Chief Kroll, I talked with Tim, I've spoken with many neighbors. I've talked to Heather and John about it, and Elaine and Sarah separately. And we've all just kind of come up with the same questions that these poor people have been dealing with. And so I think that even though the solution isn't clear, and even though it's not easy, that doesn't mean we throw up our hands and say, oh, well, we tried. It's not a super simple solution. So I guess we're just gonna, good luck. Maybe you should sue. Like, I just don't think that that's what our responsibility is as town officials. And so I'm glad that this is finally in front of the board. Government does move very slow, but we're all now on the same page, and we can move forward and come up with a solution that's going to help not just these residents, as John mentioned, but residents in the entire town, to make sure that they have an ordinance that can meet their needs for both of this and situations that might come up in the future.
Thank you, board. I really want to thank Anna and Peter too for taking those 55 letters that we received and consolidating them into 2 conversations. I appreciate that. I like the way you broke it up. And you got your message to us, as well as did all of your neighbors that were of concern.
Mr. Supervisor, do you mind if I say a few things?
Go ahead, Chief. Yeah, jump in.
Just briefly. First of all, we take noise control and noise ordinances really, really seriously, but people have to understand that we police 3 villages, several hamlets, and the town of Manlius. And each and every one of those communities has a different ordinance. Quality of life is a huge aspect that we concentrate on continuously. And in the spirit of the town law, it clearly says that we need to be able to enforce laws on noise ordinance specifically, that talk about ensuring that the quality of life in those areas is consistent, and we're sensitive to that. I don't want the group to think that the police department has not done anything. I just want the group to know that we're very restricted in the language of the law, not only in the village law, but the town law. And I've had multiple conversations with both Councilor Creasel and Waters and others about this. So more importantly, when you think about the different laws that we enforce, because we enforce all kinds of laws, town laws, local laws, county laws, state laws, federal, well, maybe not federal laws, but they all differ in such a great way. So I think that maybe there's a little bit of a miscommunication in the laws that are being enforced and the sound that's being produced and where it's being produced as opposed to where it's being received. So in this particular incident, it's being produced in the town, but it's really being received in a village. Well, there's two local laws. There's village law and there's town law. And we seem to be focusing on an adjustment to town law, but the adjustment that we make in town law for this particular situation, just on the border of a village, is going to affect areas in the town like Kirkville, Pompey, Chittenango, rural, more like not really rural, but suburban areas of our township. So we have such a wide variety of things that really need to be considered. And also the 500 feet thing, that's a state law, and it really refers to 500 feet from a residence, and it's very difficult to gauge. But certainly, the Town of Manlius Police Department is very understanding of that law. We know that law, and we can enforce that law. But again, it's not 500 feet from your residence, it's 500 feet from a neighboring residence. The issue of tannerite was mentioned earlier. Tannerite is a very dangerous and explosive compound, and that really is enforceable through another series of laws, which are federal laws that the Town of Manlius Police Department or state agencies really enforce. If anybody's using tannerite inappropriately, that's more of like an ATF issue. But we've gone to this particular area in Signal Hill 17 times at the least over the last year and a half, and not any time did our officers identify the use of tannerite or other explosive compounds, and we've identified that the shooting has been safe for the most part, as far as distance and direction. Another thing is that maybe we should be thinking about duration and distance when we talk about law changes. So duration is one issue, and distance is another. And that's what I'm talking about with the village and town borders. Maybe there should be an adjustment where when you have a town area that's right on the border of a village, maybe there should be some duration or distance considerations in that. And then lastly, of course, like Tim mentioned, in our local ordinance, we don't have decibel levels, and decibel levels is a really difficult thing. And I'm not an authority on sound, but literally, if a truck drives down Route 5 in the village of Fayetteville, I guarantee you it violates the decibel levels, just based on sort of like the ambient noise that's associated with that type of thing. So there's a lot to be discussed here. I'm certainly ready and willing to be part of that conversation. I just wanted to make sure that those things are addressed, and specifically on this focus between the village noise ordinance and the town noise ordinance as it's related to the distance between those two things. Thank you.
Chief, I think that's helpful, and I appreciate the clarification. I just want to make sure that I make clear that I was applauding your conversations with me and all of your effort. I hope that it didn't sound like I was being critical of the police response, but that our conversations, I felt like, were very constructive, and you alluded to in what you just said right now, a lot of that we discussed in our conversations, that ultimately my takeaway from that, and what I said to you at the time was, well, this is really a town board issue. This is legislative. The police can only enforce the laws that are written, and we've already articulated the issues with our ordinance. And it's not going to be so clear as to just say, now no one can make any noise ever above this decibel, because when you mow the lawn, or when a truck drives by, or when an ambulance goes by, or any of a number of other things, you're going to surpass that. So it doesn't mean now that no one can ever make noise above that decibel level. I'm sure we can create language to say if it's a nuisance and it's affecting other people in a negative way, then that's when the ordinance would be applied. Not that categorically now we all have to be mice walking around like that scary movie that I never saw, whatever it was called. You guys know what I'm talking about.
A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
That was free advertising. Sorry about that.
That's not what we're trying to do. And I think perhaps I don't want to, and here's another shout out, I don't want to make this like another Parks and Rec episode, but I do feel like we need a little bit of a committee, and I nominate Chief Kroll to join the committee if he would be. We keep putting him on new committees, which I think he's either loving or maybe tolerating at best, but
I think that we need all hands on deck. I think we need Randy. I think we need a couple of the counselors. I think we need residents. I think we need people in Kirkville. I think we need people at the shooting range. Let's have a conversation with everyone to make sure that we create an ordinance or amend the ordinance as it's written to be inclusive of all viewpoints, which is something that we as a town council have been very committed to over these last several months. So Chief, I'd be very interested to have you and Tim in a room really hashing out how we could create something that's enforceable that meets the needs of this neighborhood without limiting the rights of individuals in outlying parts of the community that where this is not an issue.
So Ellison, you can add one more committee to your list on the wall.
It is part.
I have one one thing to add that's newer. I think I remember hearing from Trustee Duggleby when he was joining a conversation with residents. He said that on behalf of the mayor, Mayor Olson, that Mayor Olson was very open to discussing and hearing about our updates that were desired, maybe for noise ordinance. So I believe there is a willingness from the village, an expressed willingness already from the village and the mayor and the trustees to have a conversation about this. I know that's just one, so I have two more to go.
Yeah, I've been in conversation with them too, and I think they knew we were going to go this route. So with that being said, I think you've certainly got your points across to us, Peter and Anna, and the rest of the board who was directly affected and went up and observed this. I appreciate that. So I think with that being said, we've got that in our minutes now that we're going to form this, and I'll leave it up to Heather and John to sort of put that together with Tim and the chief and all the ones that Caitlin listed. So, that's your call. I'll let you guys put it together how you can. That's all I can say. So I want to thank Anna and Peter for joining us. Again, you're more than welcome to stay on and listen to the rest of the meeting and listen to us a little longer. Because we're moving on to the board section. And I think, Heather, I think you're all set, right? Did you have it? Okay. So we'll start from the top again, alphabetically. Sarah, if you wanted to add anything.
I only wanted to share that I wanted to thank the Onondaga County Planning Board who provided maps and information and resources to the very brand new comprehensive planning process. So Heather, I'm going to let you come back on because you didn't mention our event on Sunday.
Go for it, Sarah. Please share.
So this Sunday afternoon, we have the first listening session, which will be about the Manlius environment. I want to thank Doug Miller for facilitating. He's going to do part of it. And we're also getting Neil Murphy, who is President Emeritus of ESF. It's from 3 to 4:30 via Zoom, and it will also be live streamed for those of you who want to watch it at a different time. And it's the first of 3. The second one will be about our history, and the third one will be about our businesses and commerce. And they will all be on Sunday afternoons, which is a good time for some people and not a good time for other people. So that's why everything's being recorded. So we really want people to tune in however you like to and give your input so that we can know how to proceed with the formal comprehensive planning process beginning next year.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sarah. John?
I think I'm all set.
Thank you. Elaine?
I'm all set too. Just want to announce or just let everyone know that the Public Safety Advisory Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 6:30 on Zoom, and it will be live streamed on Facebook.
Very good. Thank you. Karen?
No, I'm all set now. Thank you.
And Caitlin, anything else you'd like to add?
I had like 7 things. Well, that's not true. I had like 2.5, but I'm so tired. And I don't think anyone is watching. But if they are, this week is Climate Week. And so I just wanted to say, like, with everything we've been working on so far this year, it is Climate Week. It's a very important week to highlight climate change. And there's all sorts of stuff going on. So I've been posting to my Facebook page, and I'm going to send some things to Kay tomorrow to see if she might be able to post those to the town's page, because next week there is a solar tour happening in Manlius through a not-for-profit organization based in Manlius called CCAA, Climate Change Action. So if there's more details on their Facebook page, if you're interested, and I'm going to see if we can get that posted on the town page, so that if you're interested in solar energy, you can actually go and tour sites right in Manlius next week as a part of the National Solar Tour. And Sustainable Manlius will be meeting on October 1st. So if you're interested in that, email me, because October is next week, which is bananas. So that's all for me. I have to go feed my animals because they're clawing at my legs right now, so tied up.
Okay, Caitlin, thank you very much. As you can see, I have a couple of items. The first one being the tentative budget, which I'd like to give a summary on. Before I do, I do want to again thank all the department heads that we met with, along with the liaisons since August, I forget, second or third week. And of course, Ann, town manager, coordinating all of these things. And then the board at the same time interviewing them. And the fact that Ann said something about not wanting to put another 12-hour day in yesterday, because we have been really working hard on this along with Matt. And I'm going to give you a summary. Before I go into the specifics, I just want to provide a few points about the overall situation. As you all know, the tentative budget is the first draft of the budget where all the components are put together. Planned revenues, expenses, contingencies, etc., and the first mechanism to derive a tentative tax rate for 2021. The tentative budget will be given to the board for the review and markup. It is the town's board's responsibility to update the budget if necessary and present it to the public as an official preliminary budget. It is a preliminary budget that will be the subject of the public hearing that we will be conducting. I believe it will be on October 28th, but we haven't set that yet. In developing the budget, we are measured by both New York State and, of course, our own priorities. Regarding the state, we have heard they may or may not penalize municipalities exceeding the tax cap this year due to COVID. But even assuming this ends up being true, I believe we should still strive to meet the tax cap limit anyway. The cap for 2021 is 1.56%, which is down from last year's 2%. It is a trying time for the citizens of our town, and we need to do all we can to keep these taxes low. A few highlights about the tentative budget that I'm presenting this evening. Assessment. We are assuming that the increase in assessment across the town, approximately 3.5% compared to last year. This includes assessment changes to existing properties and new improved properties as well. This is larger than we have experienced for several years and reflects a strengthening of home values in our town. It is also a reason that it is important that we try to control our tax rate. As far as spending goes, the overall spending by the town has increased by less than 4% and impacted by several factors. The newly approved SPOs are in the budget. And of course, as you know, ESM and FM have graciously agreed to fund these new positions, and we are happy to work with them to accomplish this. You will see that while the police budget is up significantly, the large majority of the increase is due to these new positions and increases the existing CIRO positions. Again, all of which are funded by the school districts. So when you remove the CIROs and the SPOs from that increase, the rest of the police budget is up only under 2.5%. The health insurance premiums, estimated increase again this year, we're looking at 10%. That's really good compared to some of the other companies I've talked with that are looking at 18% in some areas. And actually, we're very competitive with OSEBA, with better than most other municipalities. But it does continue to put pressure on our budget this year. Once again, Rob, and the team at the highway have done an outstanding job with their budget, and the overall increase for this very important and large department in our town is about 1%. Overall spending is less than 4% total, approximately 3.75%. But if you remove the CIRO and the SPO changes that are fully funded, the overall spending increase is well under 3%. So it's very tight, but a responsible budget, and it needs to be. In order to meet what I believe are our commitments on taxes to our residents. The fund balance, we need to discuss briefly regarding that. I've budgeted a small increase in overall fund balance transfer. I was hesitant to increase this component further due to the uncertain economic and fiscal situation. The level of fund balance should be related to the amount of uncertainty, and we are currently living in uncertain times. Here are some of those uncertainties, most of which are related to revenue assumptions. We need to plan for a continued decrease in revenue from the courts until we are clearly out of the COVID situation. Their impact was pretty major. AIM funding. I did not put in the budget this year, as the comptroller has indicated it could be an issue due to the sales tax increases or decreases. And in fact, I'm hoping we get it in December for this year. That comes through the county, but the comptroller controls that, and we'll see what happens there. We have been notified of CHIPS funding this year, and it is in the tentative budget, but we know the financial situation of New York State, and there are very real concerns that this will continue in the future. And Rob can certainly attest to that. Interest rates are at an all-time low, also negatively affecting revenue earnings. Last, but certainly not least, based on history from the last 2 decades, we can't continue to plan on continued increases in the assessment base to help the revenue side of the budget. That's always an unknown. So to wrap this up as far as the tax rate goes, with these changes in assessment, spending, revenues, and fund balance, it puts a lot of pressure on the tax rates. As I mentioned, I think it is imperative that our goal should be to minimize the impact of total tax on our citizens. With that in mind, the tax rate increase in the tentative budget are 1.44% for the full town and 1.76% for part town, which includes the villages. So as you examine this budget in detail and consider making changes and challenges to you, is that I ask you to focus on 2 things. Keeping our fund balances solvent for the uncertain future and keeping the tax rates at the current levels or below. It's going to be a challenge, I know, but I look forward to a review of the tentative budget and any future questions you may have. So now officially, I'm going to hand this, not right away because Allison's not next to me, but I'm officially going to be giving this to the town clerk, which will also be shared with you and the public tomorrow. So that's it with the tentative budget. Under 2%, got it that far. And the last thing I have, of course, is the supervisor's report. I won't go as long as I just did. I think you've all seen the balance sheet, cash balance report, and the year-to-date budget total. So I just need a motion to approve the supervisor's report.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make that motion to approve the report.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we have one last thing, I believe, an adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
That was a motion to adjourn, I take it, Caitlin?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, very good. Thank you, everybody.
I will just say that a cat just sliced all the way down my back. So if you saw me like dive off, that's why.
Caitlin, the COVID kittens.
Oh
See
my
you
God.
later.
Bye, everybody.
We'll
Good
see.
night.
Have a good one.